At my age, I've seen much, but one choice haunts me, letting my children decide everything. It started subtly, a slow surrender of my own life, and now I deeply regret it. I remember it clearly. Clara and David, my wonderful children, sat right here in this living room, their faces etched with concern. "Mom," Clara began gently, "we just want to make sure you're taken care of. Let us manage the bills, coordinate your appointments. It'll make things so much easier for you." David nodded, adding, "We just want what's best, for you to relax." They meant well. I truly believed them, and in that moment, feeling loved and trusting, I agreed. I pictured care and comfort, a life made simpler. But once the wheels were in motion, I realized the reality was nothing like what I'd imagined. It wasn't about ease. It was about losing my own agency, little by little. Perhaps you, or someone you love, are considering a similar path, believing it's the safest or easiest decision. But before you take that step, I want to share 5 hard truths I wish someone had told me. Because the truth is, giving up control changes everything. The first truth, the one that truly surprised me, was how quickly I started losing myself. Not just my routines, but the very essence of who Eleanor was. I remember a day, just a few months after Clara and David started helping more. I was getting ready for a ladies' luncheon at the community center. I pulled out my favorite floral dress, a cheerful print that always made me feel lively. I was about to slip it on when Clara walked in, a sensible knitted cardigan draped over her arm. "Mom," she said, her voice gentle, "wouldn't this sweater be warmer? You know how you get chilled, and that dress might be a bit much for a simple lunch." I looked at the dress, then the cardigan. It wasn't a demand, not really, but her hand was already gently guiding the sweater towards me. I knew what she meant. She meant well. But as I reluctantly put on the muted cardigan, feeling suddenly invisible, a pang hit me. My choices, my little statements of self, were starting to disappear. From that day, it was as if a subtle, unseen hand began to reshape my world. My home, the place where I had made every decision for decades, started to feel less like mine. My pantry, once filled with my favorite teas and spices, slowly became stocked with brands my children deemed healthier or easier to manage. My little patch of garden, where I used to spend hours tending to my roses, was tidied up by David, who removed what he called overgrown bushes and replaced them with low-maintenance artificial flowers. Even my television schedule, once a mix of documentaries and classic films, was often adjusted to what Clara thought was more relaxing or less stimulating for me. I recall one afternoon craving my mother's old recipe for ginger cake. I went to the kitchen, ready to bake, only to find the specific ginger I needed was gone, replaced by a generic, pre-ground spice, or simply not there at all. "We thought you weren't really baking much anymore, Mom," Clara had said. My kitchen, once my sanctuary, became a place where I just observed. They chose what was best for me, and in doing so they gradually erased the comfort of my own familiar routines. It wasn't just me. I saw it in others, too. There was George, a dear friend I'd known for years from the community center. He was a man whose hands were always busy, a passionate gardener who could bring anything to life. His small backyard was his pride, a riot of color and fragrance. A few months ago, I saw him sitting alone in the center, looking utterly lost, his hands clasped idly in his lap. "George," I asked, "how are your prize-winning hydrangeas doing?" He sighed, a deep, tired sound. "My son," he began, his voice barely a whisper. "He said I wasn't using them anymore. He sold all my tools, Eleanor," said he, tidied up, the garden, replaced everything with pebbles. My heart ached for him. "He said I wasn't using them anymore. But I was, Eleanor. In my head, I was always using them." I knew exactly what he meant. His son, like mine, had meant well, trying to ease George's burden. But in doing so, he had stripped George of his joy, his purpose, his very identity. Watching George's silent surrender, I saw my own quiet defeat reflected in his eyes. It's a slow erosion, this loss of self. It doesn't happen with a grand announcement, but with tiny, almost imperceptible shifts. A choice made for you here, a routine changed there. And each time, a small piece of who you are, what defines you, slips away. It's the little freedoms, the personal quirks, the decisions that make your life uniquely yours. So, if you're watching this, if you're nodding along, I have to ask you, are you still choosing? Are you ready to let go of the small freedoms that make you you? Because once they're gone, once someone else holds the pen to your daily story, you'll miss them more than you could imagine. You'll miss the feeling of being the author of your own life. Regret, too, feeling forgotten. One of the hardest truths about letting your children make all your decisions is realizing that your world can begin to shrink without you even noticing. It wasn't that they wanted to isolate me, not at all. My daughter, Clara, for instance, just wanted to protect me from unnecessary bother. She started managing my phone calls, my calendar. I remember once, a dear friend from my bridge club, Sarah, called, and Clara answered. "Oh, Mom's resting now," she'd say, or, "It's a bit late for her to be on the phone." When I asked about missed calls, she'd shrug. "I just don't want you to be bothered, Mom." But I wanted to be bothered. I wanted to be connected. I wanted to hear Sarah's voice, even if it was late. It was a strange feeling, being shielded from my own life. It wasn't just phone calls. My son David had a similar protective streak. I loved walking to my favorite little bookstore downtown, just a mile or so away. It was my routine, my quiet pleasure. One day, I mentioned I was going. David immediately interjected, "Mom, it's just a bit far for you now, and that crosswalk is tricky. I'll take you next Tuesday, promise." Next Tuesday came and went. Then the Tuesday after. He meant well, I know, but it felt like I was 5 again, needing permission to explore my own neighborhood. Slowly, I stopped asking. I stopped trying. My world, once so full of familiar paths and faces, began to close in, one, not safe, label at a time. The independence I cherished, the simple freedom of a walk, began to feel like a privilege I no longer earned. I saw it happen to my friend Martha, too, though her situation was even more drastic. Her children, both living out of state, decided it was best for her to sell her home and move closer to one of them. She was spirited, always out and about, involved in every club imaginable here. But when she moved, she lost all those connections overnight. Her new city was unfamiliar, and her daughter was busy with her own life. Martha tried, she really did, to make new friends, to find new clubs. But it was hard starting over in her late 70s. I'd call her, and she'd sound so distant, so quiet. "I just wait for Jenny's call, Eleanor," she told me once, her voice barely a whisper. "Sometimes it's days." Martha used to be so vibrant. Now she just waits for her daughter's call, sometimes for days. It wasn't that her children didn't love her. They did. They thought they were giving her companionship, safety. But they took away her community, her routine, and a piece of her very spirit. When you're not actively making your own choices, when your children are steering your social life, it's easy for the world to feel like it's moving on without you. It's easy to feel unseen, unheard, and ultimately, alone, even with family nearby. This isn't just about being physically alone. It's about the deep loneliness of feeling disconnected from the life you once built. If you're considering letting your children take over, ask yourself, is your world shrinking, or are you fighting to keep it wide open? Are you still making your own social plans, or are you waiting for someone else to make them for you? Because once those connections fray, once you stop reaching out, it's a long, silent journey back. Guard your social life as fiercely as you guard your memories. One of the hardest truths to swallow after giving up my decision-making was the quiet strain it put on my relationship with Clara and David. It wasn't that we fought, not often anyway. It was more like an unspoken tension, a constant undercurrent that slowly eroded the easy affection we once shared. I remember a family dinner not so long ago. We were discussing some changes to the family trust, something I'd always had a say in. I tried to offer an opinion, a suggestion based on years of experience. David, bless his heart, just smiled and waved his hand. "Mom, we've got this. Just enjoy dinner. No need for you to worry your head about all the complexities." Clara nodded in agreement, a soft, reassuring look on her face. But I wasn't worried. I was contributing. And in that moment, I felt a familiar sting, a deep sense of being shut out, dismissed. Enjoy dinner? How could I, when they treated me like a child at my own table, when my thoughts were no longer valued? The worst part was the burden of gratitude. They were doing so much, after all, managing my bills, sorting out appointments, even picking out new curtains for the living room. Each act, no matter how small, came with an unspoken expectation of my appreciation, my quiet acceptance. How do you argue with someone who is doing so much for you? How do you say, "Thank you, but I wish I had chosen those curtains myself," without sounding ungrateful? The gratitude became a cage. It locked away my dissent, my preferences, my very voice. Our relationship, which once flowed with natural love and easy conversation, started to feel transactional. I was no longer just their mother. I was a project they were managing, and I had to be a good, compliant project. The constant forced smiles, the nods of agreement when I felt anything but, slowly hollowed me out. I saw this same silent rift happen to others. There were the Anderson twins, Sarah and Emily, both caring for their mother, Mrs. Anderson. Sarah, like my Clara and David, believed in taking over everything. She managed her mother's finances, social calendar, and even dictated her daily routine, always saying it was for her protection. Mrs. Anderson, once a vibrant woman who loved her bridge club and garden, slowly retreated. Her conversations grew shorter, her eyes lost their spark. Emily, on the other hand, encouraged her mother's independence. She helped Mrs. Anderson set up online banking lessons, drove her to bridge, but always let her mother decide when and how. One mother blossomed, the other withered. It wasn't about love, you see. Both daughters loved their mother fiercely. It was about respect. It was about whether they saw their mother as a person still capable of making choices, or as a fragile soul needing constant management. The difference in their mother's well-being, and indeed in the warmth of their own relationships, was stark. So ask yourself, is your family bond truly intact? Do you feel truly heard, truly respected when decisions about your life are being made? Or is there a quiet tension, a growing distance, an unspoken resentment that is slowly building? Love is a powerful thing, but it's not always enough to prevent damage when respect for autonomy is lost. It's vital to have these conversations, to set those boundaries, before the rift becomes too wide to mend. If you're still watching, and this resonates with you, please comment Truth 3 below. It helps me know I'm not alone in sharing this difficult truth, and it shows others they aren't either. Truth number 4 is one that crept up on me, quietly, insidiously. It's the unforeseen decline of your body and mind. Before I let Clara and David take over, I was active. Not a marathon runner, mind you, but I walked to the market. I cooked elaborate meals. I tended my little rose garden. These weren't just chores. They were my movement, my quiet exercise. But once they started deciding everything for me, those daily rituals vanished. "Mom, I'll pick up groceries. Just give me your list. I've ordered a meal service, so you don't have to stand so long. The garden's a bit much for you now. I've arranged for a service." Each offer, so kind, so well-intentioned, chipped away at my physical activity. I remember reaching for a teacup on a high shelf one day, a shelf I'd reached for thousands of times, and feeling a sharp twinge, a weakness I hadn't noticed before. My legs, once sturdy from all those walks, felt heavy. Getting up from my favorite armchair started to feel like a monumental task. My body, I realized with a pang, had started to think it didn't need to try anymore. When every need is met, every path chosen for you, your body starts to think it doesn't need to try anymore. And once that starts, the decline is faster than you can imagine. It wasn't just my body that felt the change. My mind, once so sharp, started to dull around the edges. I used to devour books, do crossword puzzles, plan my days with a mental checklist. But when everything was decided for me, my appointments, my activities, even what was on the television, the need to plan, to problem solve, to asterisk think for myself, slowly faded. At first it felt like a relief, a vacation for my brain. No more worrying about details, no more scheduling. But soon that vacation turned into a quiet, unsettling stillness. I'd sit with a book, my eyes scanning the words, but my mind would wander, unable to grasp the story. Puzzles lay half-finished on my desk, forgotten. Moments of forgetfulness became more frequent, and I'd chalk it up to age, but deep down I knew it was more than that. It was mental laziness, a muscle atrophying from disuse. When you don't have to decide what to do, what to read, what to learn, your mind starts taking a vacation it never comes back from. The spark, the curiosity, the mental agility that defined me began to dim. I saw this same sad truth in my old neighbor, Arthur. He was a retired history professor, brilliant, always had a new theory or a fascinating anecdote to share. His children, much like mine, eventually took over everything. They managed his finances, his schedule, even his reading list. They were so proud of how well cared for he was. But I watched Arthur, over the months, slowly withdraw. His eyes, which once sparkled with questions and knowledge, began to reflect the blank screen of the television his children had chosen for him. He stopped coming to our little book club. When I visited, he'd just nod, sometimes offering a vague smile. But the lively conversation, the intellectual sparring we once shared, was gone. He just existed. It was heartbreaking to witness the loss of that incredible mind, not to illness, but to idleness. His eyes used to sparkle with questions, with knowledge. Now they just reflect the television his children chose for him. It made me realize that taking away someone's choices isn't just about convenience. It can be about extinguishing their very essence. This hard truth is perhaps the most frightening of all, because it's so irreversible. Once your body and mind start to slow down, once those muscles, both physical and mental, begin to waste away from lack of use, getting them back is an uphill battle, if not an impossible one. So I must ask you, are you still actively seeking ways to move your body? Are you still challenging your mind with new ideas, books, puzzles, or conversations? Are you fighting against the complacency that comes when everything is done for you? Don't let the well-meaning intentions of others lull you into a state of passive decline. Because once you let your body and mind slow down, getting that spark back is a battle you might not win. Your vitality, your quick wit, your ability to move freely, these are treasures. Guard them fiercely. Truth number 5, and perhaps the most heartbreaking of all, the illusion that you can simply reverse the process once you've let your children take over. I thought I could. After a while, feeling so adrift, I tried to reclaim some of my responsibilities. I remember asking Clara if I could start managing my own bills again, just to feel a sense of purpose. She just smiled, a gentle but firm smile, and said, "Oh, Mom, why bother? David and I have such an efficient system now. It just takes the stress off you, doesn't it?" And David, he'd chime in about safety whenever I wanted to take a longer walk or try a new recipe that wasn't on their approved list of easy meals. They didn't mean to trap me, but their help became a web, and I was caught. I looked at my calendar one day, filled with appointments I hadn't made, and realized my life was no longer mine to schedule. The truth is, once the reins are handed over, they become incredibly difficult to snatch back. I learned this painfully when I wanted to sell a small, antique figurine, a family heirloom I cherished but felt it was time to pass on to my granddaughter. It wasn't about the money. It was about my choice. But when I brought it up, Clara and David exchanged a look. "Mom," Clara began, her voice soft but unwavering, "we already discussed this with the financial planner. It's for your best interest to keep these assets in place for now. It's all part of the larger plan. My best interest or theirs?" I remember thinking. My financial life, once so straightforward, had become a complex web of plans and strategies that I no longer understood, let alone controlled. It was then I realized that even my own cherished possessions, my own home, were no longer fully mine to decide upon. And it gets worse. I knew a woman, Mrs. Henderson. Lovely woman, always had a sparkle in her eye. Her children convinced her to move in with her daughter for just a little while after a fall. They promised it was temporary, that her home would be waiting. But while she was there, recovering, they sold her house. Not maliciously, they said, but it was too much for her to manage, and the money was needed for her care. When Mrs. Henderson tried to move back, after she felt strong enough, home wasn't there anymore. Her attempts to find a new place, to regain even a semblance of her old life, were met with practical and emotional barriers. She became dependent, unable to return to the life she knew. She thought it was temporary. She thought she could just go home, but home wasn't there anymore. That's the part that truly breaks your heart, the finality of it all. So if you're watching this, if you're considering letting your children take over all your decisions, I need you to ask yourself, are you prepared for the possibility that once you hand over that control, it might be gone for good? What seems easier now can become impossible later, because once you hand over the reins, getting them back isn't a simple choice. It's a fight, and sometimes the fight is too late. Think about that. Think very, very carefully. Eleanor sits in her softly lit living room, a thoughtful expression on her face. Her hand instinctively touches her chest. Looking back, my deepest regrets aren't about whether my children loved me. I know they did, and still do, deeply. But love, sometimes, can be a blindfold. My regret, the hard truth I've carried, is the cost of giving up my own agency. It wasn't that my children stopped loving me. It was that I stopped being forced slowly. One well-intentioned decision at a time. My identity, my connections, my very sense of purpose, even my physical and mental vitality, they all diminished because I allowed someone else to hold the reins. It wasn't just about losing possessions or comforts. It was about losing myself. Eleanor shifts, a determined look replacing the pensive one. She gestures with her hands, as if outlining a plan. If I could do it all over again, I would have boundaries etched in stone. I would have sought independent legal counsel before any major decisions were made. I would have clearly communicated my wishes, not just once, but repeatedly, and in writing. I'd have my own lawyer, and my own voice, loud and clear, long before any crisis forced the issue. It's about being proactive, having those difficult conversations, now too, while you're still strong and capable, so that your wishes are understood and respected when they matter most. Don't wait until the current pulls you too far. Eleanor looks directly into the camera, her eyes conveying deep wisdom and a quiet strength. This is your story. Don't let anyone else hold the pen. Your independence isn't just a convenience. It's a treasure. It's the very essence of who you are, the sum of your experiences and your choices. Guard it with everything you have. Fight for those small freedoms, those daily decisions that define you. Because once you give them up, getting them back isn't a simple choice. It's a fight, and sometimes the fight is too late. Your life, your choices. Make sure they remain yours, for as long as you possibly can.